Thank you so much for this film. In the past, we've been unable to have the people on Zoom hear the applause from the house, but just so you know, please. You can't hear it, but there's tremendous applause for your film. So
thank you.
It's really a wonderful film, and there's a lot to talk about. And I understand we're in for a treat that we're going to have another 18 minutes follow-up after our Q&A, which begs a lot of questions about the questions I have to ask you now, but we'll just go for this film. When did it come to your attention that you were going to make this film? I mean, because so much of it seems to be done in real time, and it's hard to imagine how you could do that in response in real time to everything that happens. So can you tell us how it came about?
Yeah, sure. So we started like really before even 30 days after the event started. Sheila actually read an article in the Post about the Yigal Yoshua, the Jewish man that was killed, and the family donated his organ, and his kidney went to Palestinian from East Jerusalem. And she called me. And I thought it was a great story. I thought the symbolism of a Palestinian organ within, Jewish organ within a Palestinian woman is so symbolic to how our life is so intervened in this part of the world. And then when we started it as a short, but shortly we realized that we can't tell the story without also including the story of Musa Hasuna. And anyway, and we made what you saw.
So knowing that what you knew and going in to tell that story, then how did you assemble the footage, so much of the footage from real time? For Musa's killing and so forth going forward.
So there are two things. First, we actually shot very close in time to the incident. So it was a bit difficult because we came to this family when they're still mourning and in such a new wound that they need to deal with. But on the other hand, there is today the other part of it is that today everybody's filming, so everybody's, when something happened, take off their cell phone and just shoot, and there are security cameras everywhere. There are GoPros, there are body cameras for policemen and others. There are actually cars that had so we actually gathered a lot of footage of what happened also from this kind of sources.
Right. And you started right away following Musa's family, following up with his wife, his widow, and his father. And then you stayed with them for a long time. I mean, a full year after the event. So
yeah,
and you established that relationship early on. It was still within 30 days that the family that Randa's family went to the memorial service, and you were on scene for that.
Actually, we didn't know they were going to come. We were filming the memorial, and suddenly Effie, the brother of Yigal Yoshua, had a microphone on him, and we heard the phone of Randa and her daughter calling that they decided to go. And then I heard that, and I was like calling right away a Palestinian friend of mine who is a DP that we work with all the time, and I was like, Hannah, you gotta come now. Where are you? And he was in Ramallah, and I was like, you gotta go now to Jerusalem, and we needed to film. And he literally dropped everything, and I don't know if you noticed, but the car ride looks a little bit different because we use different camera, because whatever he had in his car is what he shot in. But he raced there, and that's how this scene came about. We joined them.
Yes, and you had already been go ahead, Sheila.
No, nothing. I just want to say that the genius of Hilla is to have faith in where a story will take you. There are a lot of filmmakers who would have stopped at some point, but the point, I thought this was a feel-good story that basically said all people are the same. If I can take the organ of one and put it in someone else, then we're all human beings. And I thought, what a feel-good story. but it turned out to be quite a bit more complicated and in many ways more microcosmic. And I do think, although I don't think I've told this to Hilla, I think she's a genius of confidence and talent in terms of letting a story go where it naturally has to go. You have to understand that every time we talked, we didn't know what was next. And I think that was the genius of following this story to what to me became microcosmic of what the world has learned later on, which
Well,
is that war was underneath. There was a kind of rage that was uncontrollable, and yet on top of it was that we're one.
Yeah, it is a complicated story, and to follow it to its natural conclusions, were there are the feel-good parts, obviously, and it's symbolized in a very powerful first shot. The very first image is blood going through a transfusion line or a collection line, and that is to say, before we even know any more about the story, that all blood is the same. Whatever your background is, whatever your faith, human blood is all the same, which was very powerful to start it off because it's not mistakable. It also adds to a certain amount of tension and suspense because it's like, okay, what blood are we talking about? There's going to be some blood spilled here. What's happening? But the following of the human side of it, which is tied up inexorably with the conflict side, and the injustice, if you will, that you have to follow up and people's reaction to that. So can you talk about how you did follow that, how it sort of propulsed it along? Because, and the scoring too, I have to mention the scoring as a technical aspect, because in the beginning, the scoring is so propulsive and it's like going into the sort of the urgency of what's happening, the immediacy of what's happening. And it obviously softens up a lot more after Randa's recovering and so forth. So the story is just beautifully told, but can you say how in real time it developed for you as the father of Musa kept propelling it forward and seeking justice, and the fathers of both of them? Did you put them together? Did they decide to get together on their own? Yigal's father and Musa's
No,
father?
actually, Musa's father called the Yoshua family the day that Yigal was murdered, and in fact, there were also people from Lod that kind of connected them. And in fact, there was a business that makes the graves, the gravestone. So it's owned by a Jewish and Arab citizens of Lod, and they each donated. They donate to each of them. So their gravestone is actually made by the same company in Lod, and this guy who does that, he connected. They were connected in many levels, and also you saw in the film they actually knew each other. I mean, Yigal was working with the Hasuna family, and there was some kind of connection, but they did it. I mean, I didn't put them together. I mean, one time when Effie was telling me that he's going to visit the Malek, the father of Musa Hasuna, we decided to follow him, but it was his initiative. We didn't create it. The one thing we created, you'll see after our conversation, this 80 minutes where they're all coming together.
And when did you film that? The follow-up that we'll see in a minute.
Yeah, that's was a year and a half from when it happened, and 6 months after we finished shooting.
Okay, which was what was the date of that?
Showed them the film. We showed them the film, and then we invited them all to talk about it.
Okay. And what was the date of that? I'm just trying to put it in reference to, obviously, this film has gained a lot more significance now in view of what's going on now, and it has a whole nother level of weight to it, and helps us in a lot of ways to understand what's going on now in a much deeper way, because you've humanized the conflict and the conflicting desires for justice, for an even keel, as well as for peace. I mean, as the two representatives, the fathers want to be representatives. So. Was it that far before October 7th? I mean, how long ago was it?
Yeah, it was maybe about a year ago. So maybe 10 months before October 7th, something like that.
Okay.
And I think, to me, I agree with you that you said this film is now more relevant for everyone. But I just want to tell you that a lot of Jewish festival around the country has been canceling the screening of the film and not let it happen. And to me, it's very important. And actually, I was at the Hamptons on October 7th. And not only I was there, but one of the first news that I heard was that the guy that did the sound design for the film was murdered. He went on a bike ride, on basically workout that Saturday morning, and he ran into the terrorist and was murdered. And well, I couldn't go find a flight to go back home right away, but also I felt that with everything that is happening, the film is even more important. And to see these women, and to me, you know, of course, there are the men that are always around, but also I feel that, you know, the wife of Musa and Ira, like they're so strong, and they, in a way, you know, the men died, but they're left to put the pieces together and to find a better future for the kids and for all of us.
It was absolutely remarkable, and that the fact that the screening would be canceled is just leads to more disbelief of how this can possibly be resolved. So, Sheila, when did you get on board this right away? As soon as did you tell Hilla, look at this piece and let's make a film? How did it work out, Sheila?
Well, Hilla, within seconds of reading it, because I had made a film with Hilla. I shouldn't say I had. Hilla had made a film before called Death. What was it called? To Die in Jerusalem. Die in Jerusalem, which was an extraordinary film, and which I think one can find on the HBO website. But it's really quite an extraordinary film about it's about a suicide bomber, a young girl who goes into a supermarket and blows up supermarket and kills a Jewish girl. And again, it's the story of the likeness of bodies and people, because the coroner himself sees two dead young girls, and they are indistinguishable in terms of age and body parts and whatever. And so I guess, you know, in a less creative way, but in a more biological, physiological way, the fact that there is sameness among enemies seemed to me Hilla's territory. And so it didn't occur to me after I saw it, although my husband forgives me from reading, it doesn't really forgive me, doesn't like me to read the New York Post. I often find these little tiny things that spark my imagination. And so I immediately called Hilla. There is none other and no one other that can make a film with that kind of heart and at last. But I do agree, and I think the one thing you said is so important to both of us. I don't mean to speak for you, Hilla, but the fact that it is more relevant now than ever before. The likeness of difference is so critical in terms of saving lives, because we're one, and you know, peace is like an empty word now. And I think that this film is a cry for that in many ways. You're killing yourself when you kill your brother.
It absolutely is. And that goes to the idea that anybody that would want to cancel it is trying to cancel. It's not one side versus the other. It's trying to cancel the very thing that brings us together, that is the hope that we can recognize that we're all the same thing. And that just seems to have gone out the window. And so many things are getting conflated with one side and the other, and misrepresentation. And I want to mention one thing that that Randa's daughter mentioned, and I think that this is a critical part of what's going on in the world today, is the comments section of the response to the organ donation, because we didn't used to have that. And we didn't used to have that sort of anonymity of virulence and vitriol that goes towards a really beautiful human experience. And it just, I have so little patience with anything to do with social media, but I think that was brought out, you didn't hammer it, but I think isn't that a big piece of what's going on now, do you think, in terms of information, Hilla?
First of all, there is a war of information, and it's you never know what's real. There's so much fake, and there is so much violence with a message. And And of course, the comments that people put and respond is also very difficult. But I think also a level beyond, like there is a real fight, and you can see from, and it goes all around, and some of it is fake, you know, like there was a video that Hamas released of a woman, a hostage that was killed, and then she was actually one of the hostages that was released. And also one day I saw on my friend's social media, she posted a photo of a soldier rescuing like a kid, but two babies he was holding. And then you can see that he had 3 hands if you look really closely, which was probably made with
Oh,
like
I heard about that.
bad AI. And there is so much false information and fight of information between, and then you never know what's true and what's not. And there is a lot of violence in responses. It's like everything that you post, there is like all sorts of response. It's very difficult. So I don't read comments. I try not to.
Well, I think comments are to be damned, but you are bringing the more important point of the misleading information and geared to raise violence, to create more violence, to play on the emotions and not the facts. But we've been fighting that as a losing battle for several years now. And I wanted to mention that the perfection of which you didn't create, but that the donor organ went to an Arab Christian, which ties it yet even further together, that we're all one. It's not just one side versus the other. It's just everybody is in the same situation. So just a perfect story and a very perfect telling of it. I think really compelling. I think we might have time for a couple of questions before. I don't know, how much time do we have? Yeah, we have time for a couple of questions from the audience, which they'll have microphones that you can probably hear. Hang on a second, Ken.
Hi, first of all, Hilla, I want to tell you, I absolutely loved this film, and it really moved me emotionally. I'm an American who has been involved in the Middle East for over 50 years. I speak Arabic. I worked with Jewish Arabs and the Palestine Monetary Authority, so I know Palestine very well. What I loved about the film is we loved everybody in it. You know, the characters, the people, Musa's father, the grandmother. Oh my God, she was wonderful, dyeing the black hair. And that's, to me, that's storytelling. That's what brings us all together.
That's favorite.
Yeah. I loved her. But what I felt so sad is what you said. What can we do here? So many of us are so horrified of what's happening in Gaza, what happened with Hamas, equally horrified. And we want to reach out to those in Israel and Palestine who are building bridges. What can we do to make this film, getting together, all these wonderful groups over there? How can we reach out to them? How can we reach out to you? How can we make this film have legs?
First of all, with the film, I think it needs to be screened, and I'm also really looking forward for you to see the additional 18 minutes that you'll see, because then it's even more to me like seeing how those women, despite what happened, and it was the others who did to them, they understand that there is no other way but finding a common ground and being able to communicate and to live together. You know, there are a lot of wonderful people who are doing wonderful things, but unfortunately, you know, I feel that the message now is so negative all around. I mean, I wish we could screen the film and have discussion on college campuses in the US with everything that is happening there. I wish we can screen and discuss it with everybody, you know, everywhere, and obviously here as well. We did have some screenings in Israel, but not enough. And now, of course, all the message that I hear is very, very negative. I mean, I'm hoping for the end of the war, you know, for ceasefire, for all the hostages to be back. And then I think there is so much work that we need to do, because it's like so low now. It's a lot of people that believed in peace are very desperate now, and they feel that it's hopeless and it's not possible. But also, I want to believe that from the deepest and lowest point is sometimes where you can find, you know, maybe something positive and great. But I think there is a lot of work ahead of us, for sure.
right here.
Thank you. I work in New York City, and I heard about your film on the Brian Lehrer show. And so I drove out 100 miles today to see it, and I'm so happy I did. It was incredibly moving.
Thank you.
And I work in homelessness and housing in New York, but I work with a pretty broad network of interfaith leaders, and we've been talking for the last few weeks about what we could do together to bear witness to what we all find true, what we can all agree on. And we agree that we all are mourning about the terrible loss in the Holy Land. And I'm just talking to some friends about what can we do in New York, and I'm going to be coming back and reporting. And I think there's an openness, possibly at Riverside Church and other places, to do something. And I would want to suggest that we have a viewing of your film there and a conversation. What we want to say is that we're all mourning. We all decry any violence for any reason, and that we are looking for a way to peace. And so I'd love to find a way to be in touch with you to see if we can have more people be moved as I was moved. Thank you so much for your wonderful work.
I would love that. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm sure that Jackie can put you in touch with Sheila and Hilla, and so that perhaps this can get the kind of screening that it needs to get. Sorry, I can't see it. Yep, please.
Yes, I also want to say how important seeing this film is for us here, and for me in particular. I'm the daughter of a rabbi, and I'm also part of a group here that meets every Sunday since October 7th. It meets every Sunday in Sag Harbor here to hold a vigil that is asking for a permanent ceasefire, for peace, for release of all the hostages. Most of us are Jews here. I just think that's the demographic, at least partially. And it's so heartening to see this film for us. And I just also want to say that I also want to be in touch with you because I'm the host of a radio show that is national, and also a podcast that goes around the world called Writer's Voice. And I really want to talk with you about this film so that more people hear of it and it's never canceled again anywhere.
Thank you.
Thank
I would
you.
love that.
Again, make sure that you get a hold of Jackie and she can put you in touch with these people, which is so important. And that if that's something that comes out of the screening here today, that's all we could possibly hope for. So I think we have time for one more question from. Okay, up there. Okay.
Hi, thank you so much for this beautiful film. It's going to have a great impact. I guess my question is for Sheila. Have you sold it, and will it be streaming at any point?
It will be streaming in 2024 on Paramount, probably on the Showtime Paramount network. None of that has been decided yet, but I think when you see the addendum, the 18 minutes, you will understand that everything you've said and hoped for is in that 18 minutes, because it's about widows. I don't want to give it away, but it's about widows who share widowhood and loss and a little bit of love and compassion. And isn't that what we're asking for? So I think the combination of the two, this has been Hilla's and my dream, to be able to see the film, have a discussion, and then show the addendum, the 18 minutes. So thank you, Jackie, and thank you to your festival for not being afraid of us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Quite the opposite. Quite the opposite. So when it is streamed, it will be streamed as a piece. It'll have the addendum added on for the streaming.
I imagine. Certainly, withdrawal from some festivals was quite a shock to me, and so it's lying on its shelf, crying to be heard.
Okay. All right. Okay, so I think that's it. Thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing the next 18 minutes. And good luck and Godspeed.
Thank you.
Much more
Thank you.
applause coming from the house, just so you know.
Thank you.